Hi all, I'm excited to chat with Terran today. Terran is a startup founder from University of Waterloo and a humanity-first advocate. He has 10 years of experience as a product engineer building in consumer apps, fintech, blockchain, and AI. Thank you so much for coming, Terran.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm excited to talk with you all today about privacy tech, specifically zero knowledge proofs.
Awesome. But for how long are you in crypto?
Yeah, so I actually joined like the blockchain space Web3 in 2021 near the tail end of the boom. And it's funny, it was really a terminology change, right? Because for the longest time I ignored like blockchain and crypto until they called it Web3. And then that triggered me to think, hey, what does this mean? Like, what's going on here? And it's funny because I actually went to school with Vitalik at University of Waterloo, and same year actually, and I had heard about blockchain very early on, and at the time I thought, wow, this is so far away, and as a result I actually didn't really pay attention to it until years later. Right now, of course, I wish I did, right? But yeah, it's so about 2 years now. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, it's only 2 years.
Yeah, and could you please explain us what is zero knowledge, why it exists, and why it's now so popular?
Yeah, sure, cool. Well, for one thing, zero knowledge. You see ZK and it sounds like, well, what is this? It sounds kind of cool. But before we talk about zero knowledge technology, I'd like to start with identifying the problem, right? So there's something called the safety paradox, which is whenever you try to make yourself safer in one place, you become less safe somewhere else, right? So here's an example. Let's say you're checking into a hotel and they need to take a picture of your passport, right? And there's a risk that your identity gets stolen. Perhaps an evil employee could use your passport photo to commit crimes under your name, or maybe sign up to crypto exchanges and launder stolen money. But the hotel needs every guest's passport for safety purposes, right? What if another guest committed a crime? The hotel needs to know who they are so that everyone is safer. But this is actually not a fair trade-off. You're getting safety in the hotel by sacrificing safety in your personal life. So this is the safety paradox, and it is everywhere in life. So what if you could get the best of both worlds? Safety without sacrifice. So this is the promise of zero knowledge proofs, a new technology that offers safety without the sacrifice. And now that we understand the problem, it's easier to understand everything else and have this question answer dialogue, because yeah, it is a pretty technical, it can be a very technical subject, and if you look online, like there's a lot of like nitty-gritty on it, but it's good to start at the problem as our foundation.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, the problem does exist. And what are zero knowledge applications and how do they differ from traditional applications in terms of privacy and security?
Yeah, so apps can use this new zero knowledge technology to solve the many safety paradoxes in society. So let's call these ZK apps for short, and let's use the hotel example with a before and after. So in the old way, guests give the hotel their passport photo, but in this new way, the ZK way, guests at hotels can use the special ZK app, right? An app on your phone. So now imagine on this ZK app, guests can scan their passport photo themselves. The ZK app verifies that it's legitimate, and it generates a QR code that the hotel employees can scan with their ZK app. Now the hotel knows that the passport photo is legitimate without ever seeing the passport. And so you get the safety without the sacrifice, and the safety paradox is solved. Some sharp-eyed developers might ask, can't existing software already do this? And no, it cannot, right? So traditional software relies on uploading your passport photo to another company's computers, some startup. So you're safer from the evil hotel employees, but now you're vulnerable to evil startup employees. So traditional apps, they just transfer the risk somewhere else. It doesn't solve the safety paradox. So ZK apps are different because they never upload your passport photo to a third-party server. It all happens locally on your device without needing internet. And this is possible because zero knowledge technology is just fancy math, essentially. It's advanced math, but it can still be done with a calculator, right? So specifically, like the math just verifies that like whatever you inputted, maybe it's like a passport photo or like a government ID, is legitimate, and they use math to essentially encrypt it like a calculator, right? And then the other person's ZK app is also a calculator that can run the same calculations or similar calculations and then see, hey, this checks out. So at the end of the day, it's just math and just calculators, right? They don't need Wi-Fi. So you're no longer transferring any risk of your passport photo anywhere else. And because you're not just transferring the risk, this actually solves the safety paradox because the risk ends with you. So that's why ZK apps are a big deal. They can make all of society safer without sacrifice because the safety paradox is everywhere in society.
Yes, thank you for explaining it. And what do you think? What are the potential advantages of ZK apps in other sectors? Not like only authentication. I'm sorry.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, maybe finance, healthcare, etc.
Yeah, for sure. So like I mentioned, the safety paradox is everywhere in society. So the easiest way is to kind of like illustrate and list out a bunch of safety paradoxes and see how far the ZK technology can reach, right? So one is online shopping. When you buy stuff online, the seller can see your exact home address, but so can the shipping company, so can the customer support chatbot, any freelancers or consultants that e-commerce store hires and they go into the Shopify platform, they can see. And so can any Shopify integration that connects to the online store because they need to see the sales data. They end up getting all the customers' home addresses. So just one purchase can expose your home address to 10 different companies. Now, there's also employment salary. So when employers, they need the safety assurance that you didn't lie on your resume. So job interviewers will often ask for proof of employment or your academic transcripts. But when you give this information, sometimes it reveals too much information that can actually be used against you in negotiating your salary. Another example is financial aid. So when you apply for loans or scholarships, they'll ask for your social security number or your government ID as safety assurance that it's really you applying for a loan. But an evil employee can just steal it to borrow money under your name. Another is surveillance. So spying on people, it helps catch crime, but it also makes it easy for an evil company or government to blackmail innocent people now that you know everything about them. And all these are just exposing too much information. Like this is a common theme. Affordable healthcare is also another one. So insurance companies, they ask to see your medical records for safety assurance that they are pricing your monthly premiums correctly. So maybe you applied for dental insurance and you got approved, but in the act of showing those medical records, you reveal too much information and now you risk losing health insurance somewhere else. And yeah, another one is scams and spam marketing, right? So software companies, they'll ask you to verify your phone number for safety assurance that you're not abusing the free tier and making up like 10 accounts, 20 accounts to get more free tiers, right? So the phone verification is their safety assurance. But now your phone number can get leaked and used in spam marketing or targeted by scammers. So in fact, I don't even pick up my phone anymore because like I just get so many like bot callers and stuff. So yeah, the safety paradox is everywhere. And those are just a few examples. So ZK technology offers a way for us to solve these many safety paradox across our everyday life, and privacy is really at the core of designing these solutions.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for such useful examples. And could you also give us some examples of practical ZK apps that people might encounter in their daily lives now?
Yeah. So it's possible to make, well, the hotel example is like the easiest, but then there's you could do like ZK social media that allows you to essentially like speak freely under an alias without even the social media company knowing who you are. And encrypted chat is also like Signal it uses end-to-end encryption, but I'm not sure if Signal is zero knowledge. But a zero knowledge like chat app can be used. And then also when you sign up for stuff and you provide your email, you can use like, because the apps will like ask you for to verify your email, right? There's a way to verify your email without giving your email that uses ZK apps. So those are just a few like possible common everyday apps. And actually like one of my favorite like ZK protocols is something called Aztec Network. They have they're building like a ZK or sorry, a privacy first blockchain infrastructure based on ZK technology, and they actually have like a section in their forums requesting startups. So if you're building a ZK app in anything on this list, they will actually give you money to fund it, and that's a great resource to see what's possible. Like for example, that ZK hotel app, right, it could be on that list. And by the way, I like Aztec protocol. I don't think they have a token or anything, but I obviously got to say, like, it's not an endorsement for their token or financial advice, not financial advice. But yeah, like Aztec is like a great developer resource there.
Thank you. And what do you think? Why ZK became so popular only today? Why not like 2 years ago? Why NFTs were so popular before ZK? If the problem does exist.
Yeah. It's because the solution, like the ZK technology itself, that fancy math, is actually quite complex, and it only is recently getting more matured. So yeah, it's like a technology side too, right? And then because the use case is so high stakes, right? It's like if it's going to be used to protect so much privacy, the developing teams want to make sure they get it right. And at the same time, there's competition between like different ZK approaches. So without getting too technical, there's like different competing algorithms, ZK Snarks with their pros and cons, which we can get into later. So I think it's really like a technology development maturity thing, but it's getting close. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, thank you. Could you please tell us what steps can companies or developers take to integrate ZK technology into their apps or platforms?
Yeah. So if you want to bring the benefits of ZK technology to your product or service, the first step is to identify the safety paradoxes in your user experience. So look at all the customer touch points from start to finish, and for each safety paradox that you might find, ask why the trade-off is made, and then list the vulnerabilities where sensitive information might get leaked, and try to narrow down the minimum information needed to make that like customer touch point successful, and then mark the unnecessary excess information that gets leaked. Now, after identifying those problems, the easiest solution is to try to find an existing ZK app that solves your problem. Like for example, the hotel app in our hotel example. Now, each ZK app should have help docs to aid in your implementation, but since ZK tech is quite new, you might not find the plugin you need. You might need to develop it in-house, which is a bit harder, or a lot harder, and we can kind of dive into that too as another question. And in general, you want to design your ZK user experience to be seamless for end users. Ideally, they don't need to change their behavior. So if we look at the hotel example, the guests, they need to download the ZK app on their own phone, but it's also possible to have a dedicated hotel phone with the app already pre-installed for guests to check in. And that way the customers don't even need to download the ZK app, but they can if they want to. And that ZK app can have like no memory of the passport photos, right? So like 100 guests can use it, and the app itself would not be storing the passport photos. And one of the coolest things actually about ZK apps is like it's also possible to verify the app is doing what it says it's doing. Like the ZK developers who made the ZK app, they might say they never store the passport photos, but how can you trust them? Well, you can actually take the entire app, which is maybe like a gigabyte, right? A gigabyte app, and you can actually run a ZK proof on it to verify that it's doing what it says. So it radically increases trust there. So yeah, before implementing any of these changes, you should have your designs reviewed by 3 external parties. One is a domain expert that can advise on business impact, because actually a lot of like the implementation steps should be focused around user experience rather than the technology, simply because the technology is very, very hard, and because when there's very hard tech problems, there tend to be dedicated tech companies try to solve them. So for most companies out there, you should be thinking more about the user experience and the business impact. And so the first one is the domain expert. The second is a ZK expert that can advise on software implementation. Hopefully, like if you're just using a plug and play solution, you don't need an expert. But if you're starting to customize stuff, you should get a ZK expert. It's like similar to getting a cybersecurity expert to give an opinion. And then 3 is a customer sample to advise on their reaction to the user experience. So this step is actually like very important because safety paradoxes can be notoriously hard to spot because they are paradoxes. So double checking, triple checking is greatly recommended. And then after you implement, test and monitor the user experience to just verify that everything went well and be prepared to roll back changes if things don't go according to plan. In the hotel example, some people might just be used to giving their passport photo and they don't want to have to take a picture themselves, even though you could explain the benefits to those customers, but maybe they're just like, I don't know, this is your job, right? Humans can be hard to predict it that way, and they have their habits as well, right? So that the user experience focus is very important. And if your ZK implementation is a success, then consider writing like a celebratory blog post about it, because not only did you make customers safer, you've actually improved safety for society as a whole. That's safety without sacrifice.
Thank you. Yes, for user experience, I completely agree that it has to be like not noticeable for normal people. And also, is that hard to find a ZK expert now? How can a traditional developer can become a ZK expert? For example, like I'm not a technical person at all. So could you please explain it to me?
Yeah, so it is pretty hard to find a ZK expert, but the good news is that the documentation is becoming better and better. And like Aztec Network is a really good example. If you're a developer who wants to learn about ZK, go to Aztec Network's documentation, and they have like really clear explanations, and even at the coding level. And I would really lean heavily on that. And if it's still unclear, asking in their forums is really good, because the people working in it like to advocate for it. So when you ask a question and it's a good question, people are happy to answer, and they know that it'll help more people. So yeah, really lean on those docs.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. And can you discuss the challenges or limitations that developers might face when building ZK apps?
Yeah, so a lot actually. So if you want to be the one that builds ZK technology for your company, or as a standalone plugin, you're likely to face quite a lot of diverse challenges. The most immediate challenge is confusion around the new technology. So experts are few, and information about ZK tends to be very technical and dry. So, and it doesn't help that paradoxes are inherently confusing. So it just becomes extra difficult to wrap your head around. And the best way to stay sane here is to refer back to that hotel example and focus on the problem. Implementation is challenging, needs to be done very carefully, because flawed design leads to vulnerabilities. Because like in that hotel example, you could naively implement it and then not realize that, and maybe you only need to know the person's name, and all of the other information is hidden by design, but you didn't realize that actually you do need to know the country of citizenship to comply with legal regulations. And if you don't like consider those needs, then you'll hurt your hotel operations. And even if you know, like, okay, we gotta comply with this legal thing, perhaps there's some other thing elsewhere that you haven't considered, and it can be like removing information can also have rippling effects, second, third order effects. Maybe like as a result, your hotel gets acquired for less because like some acquiring company wants to see that passport information for some reason. So it has a lot of a lot of stakeholders, I guess, that need to be taken account. So it's really like a design challenge too. This actually results in development becoming quite expensive in both engineer salary, consulting, designers, and future maintenance. Also, it's possible that like ZK apps use more computer resources as well, and that can increase your cloud server bills. Another curveball is interoperability. So you might design successfully design a more secure system, your integrations with third-party apps can be hindered. For example, some Shopify plugins are poorly designed. They have a lot of unnecessary dependency, and your high security system just doesn't play well with their low security system. And now you lose the interoperability, even though you're doing probably better in terms of like security. You still have this problem, and while it's not your fault that the plugin was made unsecure, it's not your fault, but it is your problem. So interoperability is another challenge. And then even if you have excellent engineers who understand ZK technology, there's a risk that they fall into a nerd trap and they take things too far. They get so excited about the technology, they tend to, and then they over-engineer ZK features in places that don't need it. And this can really complicate your development code base, slow you down, but it can also hurt the user experience. So a lot of like product manager practical sense is needed as well. And then just, adding on to the challenges, you'll also want to try to avoid reinventing the wheel. ZK math is very complicated, so it's best to use, don't try to remake the algorithm yourself. It's best to use proven ZK libraries for building software development libraries. So some of my favorite ZK libraries are from Aztec Network. There's like JavaScript libraries for it, and then they actually have their own language for developing ZK apps. And with that, they've actually hidden away all the really complex parts and made it simple and easy for developers to use. So that's definitely one to lean into as well. And then communicating your ZK challenges, also a challenge. Your ZK changes is also a challenge. So if you imagine if your team struggles to learn it, how confused your customers might be if you don't explain it well. So keeping communication simple and focused on that problem and the user experience, it helps a lot. So, and then there are risks around legal compliance. So some regulators require you to collect excess data, and that forces you to go with suboptimal designs. Having yet another set of experts for consultation will make it even more expensive to implement ZK tech. So overall, there's just a ton of challenges around ZK tech that makes it difficult, expensive, slow, and risky to implement. And that's why a lot of innovation in ZK tech right now is at the infrastructure level. Companies like Aztec Network who try to simplify the process for you. And as a builder, it's in your best interest to lean into the community of experts and rely on their expertise, a lot of which is for free in the forum. And you can even submit requests for startups into their list, and maybe someone else will build the ZK app you need and save you a lot of time and money and headache.
Interesting. Yeah, there are some challenges. And Terran, how do you deal with worries that ZK tech could reduce transparency in ZK apps?
Yeah. So critics of zero knowledge technology, they are right to be worried about reduced transparency. So the paradox starts with the desire for safety, which is normal and healthy. It's good for customers to keep them safe. But this desire for safety, it often manifests as a desire for intel, to know more. And it's very easy to take things too far and demand excessive personal information to ease those fears. And losing that intel to ZK privacy can make people and companies feel scared and in the dark. In the hotel example, the hotel might be concerned that the ZK app only verifies the name. They may argue that more information is needed, like the age, ethnicity, and the home address. But do they really need that information? Because one could argue that desire for more intel is like a gut instinct, but is not necessary, and it's a slippery slope that can even fuel discrimination. But people often, they want to be better safe than sorry. So while I do agree that this reduced transparency is an issue, we have to be critical and ask, is it just discomfort from just wanting more intel, which is very natural for humans to do. We want more information even though we don't necessarily need it. And then at the end of the day, it's actually about how you design the system. So if you design a system where the right amount of information is revealed, then you can reduce the dangers of transparency, right? Here's a nightmare scenario. Imagine a poorly designed ZK system for prescription medicine. So in this hypothetical scenario, 99% of people can safely and privately access medicine. But a loophole allows 1% to abuse the system using and actually hoard medicine. And the privacy is manipulated to pretend to be many different people, but it's all just one person trying to hoard medicine. So that would be a fault of a poorly designed system, and you can't really blame the technology, which is fairly neutral, right? And so yeah, it's a design challenge for sure. Every industry and use case is different, and that's why it's important that ZK technology is developed in the open and collaboratively. It affects your industry as a whole and society as a whole, and I think we'd be foolish to think that ZK tech only has positives and no consequences. Transparency is indeed at risk if ZK systems are not designed well. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Terran. And what future trends or advancements do you expect for ZK apps?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a history repeat, where every powerful technology is scrutinized by the many ways it could go wrong or be used for evil. But in the end, the good side wins, because I think humans in aggregate want to do more good than harm. After all, these technologies often come about to solve a problem. So this was the case with nuclear energy, the internet, encryption, artificial intelligence, blockchain. I see this trend repeating with ZK tech. And yeah, those critics, right? It's good to have critics because of that. I think also ZK tech is going to get simpler and easier to implement, thanks to those startups building the infrastructure and the SDK libraries to handle the hard parts. And that allows businesses to easily build ZK apps to handle their use cases, which further allows businesses to just plug in those ZK apps to solve their industry problems, which further drives ZK adoption and then improves security for society as a whole. And then on the technology side, trend-wise, I think post-quantum resistance is going to be a must-have. Right now, there's two mainstream types of ZK tech. One is quantum resistant already, the other is not. I'll just quickly go over it. I don't want to get too technical, but like the first is something called ZK snarks. So this is an algorithm that's a bit more mature and ready to use, but it's not quantum resistant yet. But it can be upgraded to be quantum resistant. And that'll take time to build, and there's no guarantee it'll arrive in time. Just real quick, the big deal about quantum resistant is that quantum computers, they can break encryption, and as a result, you can see all the secrets on the internet, in the world. And yeah, that would be quite disastrous. So quantum resistance upgrades encryption to not be able to be cracked by quantum computers. So yeah, ZK snarks, they're more mature, ready to use, but not yet quantum resistance, but can be upgraded later. Now the others is ZK Starks. So they're less mature. They're not really ready to use yet, but they are already quantum resistant. So which will get there first, we don't know yet. And there's definitely more nuances, but we don't need to get too technical. Frankly, I don't know which one will be the industry leader. But overall, I believe that zero knowledge technology is good and inevitable, because the safety paradox is just begging to be solved. It's a real problem. The question is, how will we as human civilization agree on how to design and implement it in a safe and beneficial?
Okay, thank you so much, Terran, for your time. It was such an informal and useful chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my pleasure. Thank you. Thanks, Malika.